Great. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Alec Cooley. I'm the Senior Advisor here with Busch Systems, and I will be your moderator for today's program. Today's program's focus is making an actionable plan, strategic planning to guide recycling and waste reduction. We have an excellent program that I will introduce in just a minute or two, but I want to welcome everybody to the program. I also want to give a quick shout out to Illinois State University and the facilities folks there, and just thank them for hosting me here. I'm traveling and visiting with the campus, so I appreciate their help with doing this program remotely. So if we can go to the next slide. So we have a great panel here today. I've been excited since we first started brainstorming, putting this program together. We're going to be hearing a joint presentation that's been put together by Dina Keeler, who is the Director of Auxiliary Services with Emory University, as well as Amity Lumper, who is the President and co-owner of Cascadia Consulting Group. And then we'll also have support and input as we go through from Michael Acode. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Michael, who is an associate and works with Amity at Cascadia Consulting Group. So with today's program, we're going to be, obviously we're focusing on strategic planning. What we're going to be hearing is sort of a combination of some of the best practices. What goes into doing effective planning? What are the steps? Who are the stakeholders? All those steps that all contribute to doing an effective planning process. And then we're going to combine that with a case study from Emory University. Cascadia and Emory worked together on putting together their plan several years ago. We'll learn more about that in a moment. But I also just wanted to make sort of underline the point that though this is the case study will be focused on a university, a lot of what we're going to be hearing really is universal to large institutions and other sectors. So so have faith that you're going to be learning and hearing things today that apply to your situations as well. If I can go to the next slide. With these webinars, obviously, we're always limited a little bit from doing remotely in terms of being able to interact, but to the extent we can, I want to encourage having some back and forth as possible. So I think at this point, everybody's pretty familiar with how the Zoom function works, but I'll just make the point, if you have comments, things you want to share, there's ideas, examples you want to riff off, share things you've done at your facility, encourage you to do that using the chat function specifically for this sort of dialogue back and forth with each other. If you have questions that you specifically would like to hear addressed with any of our panelists, put that separately into the Q&A function. That will help me to sort of keep them separate and know which ones to read out loud as we go through. And as I said, as we go through, please do share, what are you doing on your campus or at your facility? Would love to be able to share that back and forth and get some discussion going just amongst everybody in the audience as well. Next slide, please. So to set up the discussion, I started my career out many years ago at a state university in California, and I remember at the time making this observation of we were just when you first start out building a recycling and waste reduction program, you really are you're just trying to get bins out there. You look for resources where you can, you get grants, and you tend to these programs tend to develop in a very piecemeal sort of way. You're simply trying to get material recovered. But from my experience, large institutions, you reach a point as you grow and expand where there's a diminishing return in terms of what you're really able to achieve if you're working in that sort of ad hoc fashion. To really advance and have an effective program, if zero waste is something you want to be more than just a slogan, but something where you're actually achieving 50, 60, 70% diversion, that requires stepping back and really fundamentally understanding how your institution functions. How is waste generated? Where does it go? What are the systems in place that help to ensure that recycling is intuitive, it is easy, that people will participate at higher rates? All those require looking at your system in a holistic fashion. And so that's an important step that institutions can take. But we also know that that's not an easy lift to do. It takes resources to do effective, comprehensive planning. And many times it's hard to justify that. How do you communicate to leadership to make that investment? So understanding what that ROI is, how does that actually benefit your program? That's also part of what we want to hear about today. And I'm excited to hear from the Emory University side in particular. A few years in, what have the results been? What have they been able to realize with this process? So with that, I'll step back and really hand it over because I want to hear from our speakers. So first off, we're going to start with Dina Keeler from Emory University, and I will hand it over to her.
Thank you so much, Alec, and thank you so much for having us here. I also wanted to send a shout out over to Cascadia. I've known Amity for many, many years. We met in 2015 and, consider her a colleague and a friend. And it's been a really great journey working alongside Cascadia. And I had the opportunity to work with Michael Akote as well. And they have just been two tremendous resources and really helping Emory get to where we need to be, and also in pulling these slides together for this presentation. I also wanted to say thank you to Kira Stopczynski, who's in my office. She is my right-hand person on everything that we do. And she's relatively new to Emory. She actually has her 1-year anniversary today. She was a university graduate last year. So a thank you to her as well. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about myself. My background is a bit unusual in that I actually started in dining services. I was a restaurant owner for about 12 years in Decatur, Georgia, which is about 7-minute drive from the Emory campus in Atlanta. And I transferred over into Emory, working for the contractor as the retail director of dining services. So during that time, I ran about 14 restaurants at the university, and then I transferred into the events director for the university. So both of those positions really kind of gave me an interesting view on how waste is managed in dining halls, how waste is managed at events. So it was a real benefit when I moved over to this position in auxiliary services, where I work for the service provider, Campus Services, and we provide services across the university for just about anything the university needs, whether it's support on zero landfill endeavors, project management. We provide ground services, custodial service. So we really are kind of the umbrella for services for the university. I studied public and urban affairs in my undergraduate arena, and I have an MBA with a focus on sustainability management. And I also have been very, very fortunate to sit on the board for the Georgia Recycling Coalition alongside our amazing executive director, Gloria Hardigree. So just a little bit about myself. Next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about the strategic planning efforts at Emory University. And just to give you a little background history about our program, and this started long before I was even on the campus. So in 1990, in our primary library at Emory, the Woodruff Library, a group of librarians on a grassroots level started recycling white paper. They saw a great opportunity. Paper was being landfilled. They took it upon themselves to bag it up and take it home and get it recycled. And that's how it all started. They reached out to Campus Services. I think they realized the enormity of the task of collecting and recycling white paper on 12 floors of a building, a very large library. And so they reached out to facilities. And at that point, recycling was becoming more topical in university settings. And so Emory Recycles came into inception, and we started supporting those services at the Woodruff Library. In 2005, a landfill diversion goal was set for the university. And that was really what kicked off our place trying to build a strategic plan. The sustainability vision for the university used a baseline of 2005 to 2015 to set that original goal, which is a 65% landfill diversion. And so really at that point in time, we realized that we really needed to start a plan in order to get to that goal. But before I get too far along with the strategic plan, I did want to give you just a little bit of information about the university, a place that I have called home for about 21 years now. Emory, I believe most of you know, is a private, it's a nonprofit university. It is considered a liberal arts university, but it does share around the world research component that has supported laboratory research in the areas of HIV, AIDS, and most recently COVID-19. We're situated in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're lucky enough to be in a historic neighborhood called Druid Hills. And I think this image on this first slide really shows the beauty of our campus. I think we have one of the prettiest campuses. There's lots of others out there, but I take a lot of pride in the trees. We have a gorgeous tree canopy and a deep commitment to sustainability. We have about 24,000 faculty and staff, roughly 15,000 students, about 8,000 undergrads, 7,000 graduate, and our students live both on and off campus. We have a very proud portfolio of LEED certified buildings. We have about 40 between the university and Emory Healthcare. We have multiple space types that we are targeting with our landfill goals. We have 1,641 laboratory spaces on our campus. We have athletic facilities. We have multiple dorms across 2 campuses. We also have a sister campus down in Newton County, which is about 45 minutes east of the Emory campus, which is Oxford College, about 1,200 enrollees at that school. And it's actually been a great place for us to do a lot of pilot programs around landfill waste diversion. As I said earlier, the recycling program started in 1990 at a grassroots level. And in 1998, we were fortunate enough to get funding to build an on-site materials recovery facility that is still operating today. And Amity, when she was here helping us build our plan, was able, to make some recommendations and tour that facility with us. So the facility is used as a hub for us for collections of material across the university and some healthcare facilities in the Atlanta area. But we also partner with vendors on hauling those commodities and any materials that need to be taken off campus. And we have about 600 acres. We do have 2 satellite campuses. One is our Claremont campus, which is about a mile away from campus, primarily residential, but we do have some athletic facilities on that campus. The other one is a campus that's been around since the 60s, and we're in the process of kind of rebuilding that campus. So next slide. I did want to just mention one interesting component to the university in regards to having peer colleges and universities that are in close proximity to us. We are very fortunate to be situated between the campuses of Georgia Tech. We're about 90 minutes from the University of Georgia. Agnes Scott College is about probably 5 miles away from our campus, as well as Georgia State University, and the group of campuses that are a little south of downtown Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark, Atlanta. So we're really fortunate that we have partners right here in the Atlanta area that are in higher education that have been working with us on strategizing to getting to our landfill diversion goal. So as I said, our landfill diversion goal was 65%. That was set on a baseline of 2005. We missed it. We missed it about 10%. We were a little bit over 55% when we finished out 2015. And the new goal was set for 2015 over a 10-year period to be met in 2025 of a 95% landfill diversion. So we were given a very large task, and we have been strategizing for a very long time to try to get to that 95% waste from municipal landfills by 2025. There were some sub goals that were a part of the 95% landfill diversion goal, that all university events will be zero landfill waste by 2020. We have not had landfill containers at any of our events since 2020. We provide organics and recycling at all of our events, and we have been very successful with that program. We are working towards all of our events and functions to be plastic bottle free by 2025. We have been exploring some options for bulk water service. We've had some pretty successful events around commencement activities, which can be very challenging when you have a lot of families and guests to the university that aren't that familiar with our recycling program. So we have been able to do some bulk water service features at commencement and orientation events. So it's a great way to escort our campus or our students off campus and introduce new students to our campus. We also have strengthened our administrative mandates for recycling and composting. Emory does not provide landfill containers to any offices, and the only areas on our campus where we have landfill containers are in a centralized station where building occupants have to sort their own desk side materials. And we did eliminate desk side trash bin service. Our custodial staff no longer services that. We did some peer benchmarking that Amity will talk with you about. And we saw that the opportunity for us to get to our landfill diversion goal was greater if each person was responsible for their own waste. Next slide. So I'm sure many of you have seen some of the challenges that we have had here on campus. And another shout out to Cascadia for helping get us cleaned up. These are a few images that were taken before we began our work with Cascadia. So as you can see, the biggest challenge that we had was lack of standardization. Our signage, our labeling, the bags that we were using, the equipment that was in our buildings, it was really all over the place, as you can see. So one of the biggest challenges for us was to figure out how to take a program that was started in 1990 and try to build a standardization across the campus so that we had the ability to have a cohesive message, and we could use that messaging in order to train our community as to how to properly dispose of materials. We were struggling a bit with that. Emory Recycles is a fairly small department, and the Office of Sustainability, and a huge shout out to them because they've been tremendous partners of ours, supporting education, outreach, and communications for the program. We're both very small offices, and we realized that we just couldn't do it with the resources that we had. If we were really going to put a comprehensive plan together, we were really going to need some help from some experts. Next slide. So we had to put our heads together and figure out how to start. We were fortunate in that we realized that we had some strengths at the university already. We had a dedicated team from the Emory Recycles group that was managing materials from the exterior spaces. And we also had a very deeply committed team of custodial staff that had been with the university for a long time that understood the importance of recycling. We had a VP in a position that felt that having a standardized package for the university was vital to the success of the goal. And he provided, through his office, centralized funding to support that rollout of the standardization of equipment, signage, and communication. And then we have community feedback, and that primarily comes through our sustainability team. They have developed a zero waste ambassadors program that works with students, faculty, and staff across the university, where we continue to get feedback about our program. So we knew that we had the strength. We realized that in order to get to that goal, we were really going to have to pull all of the stakeholders together in order to get to that goal. And so that's when Emory Waste Think Tank came into play. We realized if we could get all the stakeholders at one table, that we could really start to put a plan together to help us get to this new goal of 95% landfill diversion. So you can see on the left side of the screen, that was, a combination of stakeholders from all over the campus. Of course, operations and Emory Recycles is we're the umbrella of operations for the Emory Zero Landfill Initiative. Our campus customers are very committed to sustainability, and we have an active sustainability vision for the entire campus. Again, our partners in the Office of Sustainability Initiatives couldn't have done it without them. They're vital to the success of our program and providing education and outreach. We also found that there were some great opportunities working alongside our environmental health and safety officers. As I mentioned earlier, we have 1,641 labs across campus. No recycling in those labs. And that still is a challenge for us today, but that's one of the opportunities we'll discuss later in the presentation. But we work directly with them. The Waste Think Tank had members from the Environmental Health and Safety Office that helped us build SOPs on how to properly recycle in lab spaces. And then, of course, we have some amazing graphic designers that work in campus services that really began to build a cohesive messaging for the program through signage, through proper labeling of all our equipment, and that was based on how the space was being utilized. So we had great advisory groups that we were working with internally, but we still felt like we needed the strength of experts in the field to come and support that. And an RFP was put out in 2015, and two organizations were selected to work together. And I'm so thrilled to be presenting with Amity Lumpert today. She's the co-president and owner of Cascadia Consulting Group. We were very interested in working with Cascadia. They are situated on the West Coast. And many of us know, especially here in the South, that there's so much innovation that's coming in the area of waste from the West Coast. But it was also really important to work alongside those that are here in the region that understand the challenges with composting facilities, remaining vibrant and not closing their doors, being familiar with policies around waste, and just kind of the general landscape of how waste is managed in the South. And so in 2016, those groups were chosen to partner together to build the 2017 Materials Management Master Plan that Amity will share with you in just a moment. And in 2018, after the master plan was created and shared with the university, the Emory University Senate voted on a campus-wide waste policy that was also signed off by the President's Council at Emory and went into effect January 1, 2018. So we felt like we were on great standing. We had a plan, we had a policy. Now we really just needed the experts to come in and help us implement the policy. So Amity is going to share a little bit about what that looked like, the gathering of that information to build that plan, and then the coordinated rollout of that plan. So Amity, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dina and Alec and Busch, for hosting this webinar. I feel so fortunate to be able to participate. It's been an absolute pleasure. And Dina, you and your team and Kira get so much credit here too for helping put together a great presentation and slideshow. So thank you, really appreciate it. I actually got my start in a college environment as an undergraduate student working part-time to take our recycling program to the next level back in the late 90s, 98, Dina, you mentioned, was when I got my start in recycling waste reduction on a campus here in Seattle, where I'm still based. And then I've had the privilege of working, of course, with Emory, which we're featuring today, and just very, very excited to showcase all the great work Emory has done, is continuing to do, and leading and innovating. Very excited to elevate that story, and have also had opportunities to work with many other higher ed institutions and corporate and institutional campuses across the country. So excited to bring that expertise. I'm seeing the questions where I think we're going to get to those after the presentation, do a little bit of responding. My colleague Michael Akodi is here. Thank you, Michael, for doing some real-time response right now on those. And if we're not getting to them now, we'll get to them later. Alec's going to help facilitate that. So I'm going to talk just briefly about, if we can go to the next slide, please. Wonderful. Our planning approach, and we're summarizing that here in 6 steps. I'll just walk briefly through each of those, and then we can dig in more in the Q&A with questions. As Dina said, Emory was already leading on so many fronts with their cross-functional team, the think tank, high-performing recycling program, unique on-site MRF, organic waste collection in selected spaces, and an upstream focus on waste reduction and sustainable procurement and reuse even at that time. there was so much already to celebrate, and that's where we love to get our start in the planning process, is really taking an inventory of all the great things happening already. What are the assets? What are the initiatives happening already? Let's capture those, celebrate those, reflect on those, and learn from those. And then we dig in, and if we go to the next slide, please, I'll start with the first step here. We begin here in step 1 by defining the scope of the plan. So who and what is included versus not. For example, at Emory, and Dina, feel free to correct me if I'm misrepresenting here, but we had a primary focus on Emory's main campus, which we'll get to see a little more of in a video that Dina's going to share in a bit. It's beautiful. I can attest to that as well. I've walked through many, many buildings and spaces across campus. And then we had a secondary focus on those satellite campuses. So still wanted to see what was going on there and what key opportunities might exist. Emory Healthcare was not included in this phase of work, though we did engage with them as a stakeholder and potential for future assistance there. And then construction and demolition materials, other sort of unique material streams were also not directly addressed. We work closely on this slide. We're seeing what we call generator areas or generator groups. We work closely with Dina and her team at Emory to categorize each building and space on primarily, again, on that main campus into each of these 8 generator groups, which have similar functions and material streams, and have specific strategies we'd be developing for them later in the planning process. So then the next slide, please. Another part of this first step is to capture the flow of materials. And I will say this is a outdated slide. Dina, thanks for letting us still include this. I wanted to include this because this is one of the most powerful visuals we've found developing with our institutional partners to really visually capture how many material streams, and actually this was, as I noted, we didn't even include all the material streams. So this is 14 of the key material streams we focused on in this planning process. And in reality, Emory at that time was managing about 40 material streams in total, if you included all those other materials. So just having this visual, and we've heard it's so powerful to share with leadership and stakeholders, to understand and develop an appreciation for the complexity of materials that you are managing, and who is collecting and handling those materials, and who are the vendor partners as well, who are hauling and processing materials and bringing them to market. Next slide, please. Dina spoke about this. I think this was a really great, incredible benefit of and just smart decision from Emory of engaging an extensive array of internal stakeholders to the Emory community. And we've listed the departments. We had in-person interviews with over 25 stakeholders across these various departments, as well as those external vendors who provide hauling, processing, and other support services. And those interviews are powerful to be able to listen again and celebrate what's going well, identify opportunities for improvement, and gain buy-in and ownership, because ultimately you're going to need those folks to help implement that plan. So really wanting to capture all the great intelligence again across various stakeholder groups. And then on the right, this was really exciting. Dina noted this ecosystem of peer institutions right there in Emory's backyard in the greater Atlanta area. These are some of the folks that came together from campuses across the city for a half-day stakeholder summit. We were fortunate enough to be able to co-host with Emory and help facilitate, and really capturing intelligence from those peer institutions and similar needs and even market power that could be flexed by acting together in that Atlanta marketplace. Want to give a special shout out again to Gloria. Dina mentioned her earlier. She was instrumental in making that summit happen with the Georgia Recycling Coalition, and it was just a wonderful opportunity. So very grateful to have participated. Next slide, please. Great. So step 3, everybody loves a good waste audit. I see we've got some questions on that. So again, we'll get to those. Waste audits, characterization studies are one of our core competencies. So we're extra passionate about that at Cascadia, and it's an integral part of our planning process. And we scale our efforts on how to conduct these audits in a way that meets the needs and resources available with the institutions we partner with. And oftentimes it involves engaging students. We have teams of our own that go out and visually or hand sorts, characterize material. And for this particular endeavor with Emory, we had about 250 samples that we sorted into 2 categories. And my colleague, as I mentioned, Michael Akodi, is here today and will help me respond to some of those questions, bringing many years of experience, believe about a decade of experience doing that exact work across various kinds of institutional and corporate campuses. And next slide, please. And these were some of the key findings that we discovered as a result of this Emory audit. So again, you can see those generator groups represented that we spoke to earlier, addressing contamination levels, capture rates for key recyclables, and recoverability potential in the landfill stream. Next slide, please. And the peer research, Dina also referenced this earlier. We were fortunate to be able to do some broad-based research of about 50 higher ed peers across the country. Again, worked with Emory to identify those most relevant for them. And then we narrowed in on these 6 peers. Want to thank them if they're in attendance for offering their expertise, participating in interviews, sharing resources, and just learned so many cool things in those conversations and just great connections. We've had stories where actually in Atlanta, 2 other Atlanta area colleges who were able to exchange surplus garbage and recycling collection bins free of cost. Mutual benefit there. So not only get great data to benchmark, but also some great connections and relationship building there. All right, I am nearing the end of my portion and then I'll hand it back to Dina. Next slide, please. So step 5, this is where we dig in, and up until this point, we've been soaking up and collecting all the data and experiences and recommendations from stakeholders and peer research. And now we bring it together to inform and develop future strategies to meet the institution's goals. And these are sort of the categories of strategies that we typically look at. And we'll move to the next slide, please. Great. And then we're not going to focus on the details here, but you can see we take those strategies and we flesh them out and really look at, as Alec was saying, what's the potential return on investment? What are the costs? What's the return in terms of diversion or waste reduction impacts? You can scroll to the next slide, please. Just examples of other recommendations in, again, more upstream with sustainable procurement and reuse, as well as tracking and reporting, seeing those questions as well. And many of you report to STARS, LEAD, maybe some of you TRUE. So setting up those strategies to help support future data collection and tracking. And last slide. So this is where we sort of another visual charted this big mountain with these strategies for Emory to climb and to meet the school's ambitious goals. And of course, the per unit costs, you can see we get more and more diversion, but the per unit costs get higher. the further up that ladder that you go. But we also know diversion isn't the end goal. We're actually trying to go up the hierarchy and emphasize reuse and reduction, which Emory, again, has done well for some time now. And that feels like a perfect segue to turn it back to Dina, who is so personally and professionally committed to living and breathing the 3 R's. And she's just such a trusted and recognized face of recycling at Emory. So it was so fun to get to experience that firsthand. Thank you. Take it away, Dina.
Oh, thank you so much, Amity. I hope you know I feel the same. So next slide, we're gonna show you one of the communication videos that came out. It was a very impactful video, and one of the things I just wanted to mention about this video, it's also one of the questions that we're going to take after the presentation is, kind of what are the benefits of the goal? And I think, for Emory, one of the real benefits is having that commitment at the very top, setting the goal, and having that goal from the president's office all the way down through the organization. It makes it, obviously there's some challenges, but it does make it much easier, which, we'll go into more detail later. But this video was created through our partners in the sustainability office. And what you'll be able to see is all of the senior leaders at the university that are a part of this mission. And that's really what we realized going through our plan, was that we had to have everyone on board to do it. And so once the University Senate approved the waste policy, and it was signed off by the president's leadership cabinet, this video was sent out across the university to announce the new program. So with that, I will ask that the video go ahead and you can run it now, and I'll jump back in when it's over.
Emory's 2025 sustainability vision sets the goal of 95% diversion of waste from landfills.
Landfills have negative social, economic, and environmental impacts on our neighborhoods, disproportionately for our lowest income neighborhoods. They also are a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Composting, on the other hand, sequesters carbon and helps grow our food. Please do your part to sort items into compost and recycling bins rather than landfilling waste.
Emory's commitment to social justice demands action to create a post-landfill future. Landfills impact the most vulnerable of our community members locally and globally. Carefully sort your recycling and put only food and food-related waste in the compost to aid in this transition to a zero landfill Emory.
Emory hired national experts to help develop a plan for achieving its 95% landfill diversion goal. These experts recommended all units of Emory University, including Oxford College, remove servicing of desk-side waste bins, add more uniform sets of recycling and composting bins in convenient interior spaces, and remove landfill as an option for outdoor spaces.
For desk-side waste, you can still keep a bin at your desk. It will not be emptied for you any longer by custodians. Custodians will focus on cleaning, and a new team of waste specialists is being created to improve collection at central locations. I understand this is going to be a cultural change for all of us, and I ask that we all be patient as this transition will take time. We will work with you during the spring semester, giving us time to transition to this new culture of waste diversion.
As a physician trained in medicine and public health, it is particularly important that Emory models sustainability best practices. Composting and recycling is a small way that all of us can support public health globally and locally. And none of us is too busy to take the time to get this right.
Careful sorting of waste is an exercise in mindfulness. Take time to get up from your desk and properly sort your waste items into compost and recycling. Just as you would in your own home, take waste from your dining room or bedroom to your kitchen.
At the central bin stations, there are 5 bins. Mixed paper, like newspaper, colored paper, and small cardboard. White paper, like copy and printer paper. And a metals and plastics bin for plastic bottles, aluminum cans, foil, snack wrappers, plastic bags, and most office supplies. And a compost bin for food and food-related waste. In every building, there are also bins for hard-to-recycle materials, like glass, batteries, ink and toner cartridges, and aerosol sprays. Nothing needs to go into the landfill bin except styrofoam. If no styrofoam is brought to campus, we eliminate the need for landfill bins completely.
We owe it to our surrounding communities and future generations for Emory to lead the way to a post-landfill future.
So thank you so much to our friends at Busch for supporting that video. It can be a challenge at times to try to operate one of those videos while you're trying to present. So thank you for your support there. I want to talk a little bit more about the infrastructure. I know that you saw some of these images in the video, and I did want to recognize Busch. They have been tremendous partners of ours in implementing the new infrastructure that we needed when we standardized our campus. So the bins that are in the picture on the left, those are actually all from Busch. And the majority of the equipment that we have across our campus inside our buildings, we worked very, very closely with the Busch team, and they did a tremendous job meeting the inventory that we needed to outfit an entire campus. So I don't want to belabor this because I know it was addressed in the video, but I just wanted to talk about the importance of what comes from the desk. And so in our waste policy, as the video stated, custodians used to go into every office at Emory and they would pull the material. With the new waste policy, it was incumbent upon the building occupants to actually manage their own waste and be responsible for that waste. And working with Cascadia and Burns McDonald through some benchmarking, we found that best practices were for individual occupants to actually sort their own material. So the station that you see here on the left is one of those central stations that's in close proximity to most of the offices in all of our major buildings around campus. So if you have a recycling bin in your office, you would take that bin to this station and you would do your own hand sorting versus having a custodian pick up that material from your desk. Another part of the policy is that landfill bins can no longer be purchased using university funds. So you'll see that there is a landfill bin at the central station, but prior to standardizing our equipment package, we had landfill bins all over campus. And it was very easy for folks on campus, just because it was convenient to throw recycling or organics, whatever they had in their hand into those landfill bins. So we really streamlined that and started minimizing the number of landfill containers that we have on our campus, to where now if you have landfill, you have to go to the station. We did add a lid. It's not featured in this video because this video was put together before we completed our equipment package, but we decided that we would put a lift lid that was also provided by Busch on those landfill containers to make it just a little bit harder. You had to lift that lid in order to use that particular unit. And we really believe this has been helpful. It causes people to pause and really think about what they're sorting and putting it in the right place. And also mentioned in the video is our exterior spaces. So here you can see we have converted the landfill containers that we used to have in our exterior landscapes. Now we collect recycling and organics in our exterior spaces only. Next slide. The hard to recycle stations, these actually have been much more popular than I even thought they would be. We started out with just a handful of these, and we have grown this program into having 36 of these stations around our campus. So every major building at Emory has a hard to recycle station. And in the 5-bin stations that you just saw on the previous slide, there is this notice here that's on the left that tells you where the hard to recycle station can be found in your building. So if you're sorting your material at your desk and you have a glass bottle, you're not going to be able to put it in that 5-bin station, but it will tell you where you can take it in the building. We've been fortunate to partner with environmental health and safety on some of the hazardous materials that are collected in the hard to recycle stations. Batteries are managed through that office along with bulbs and aerosol cans. We're able to use that reporting on our annual report. The ink and toner cartridge, we also have a unique relationship with Flex Imaging, who provides a lot of the printing products and also some of the printers here on our campus. They do this free of charge for us. They provided the containers for the hard to recycle stations. And of course, we created the signage, so it's standard across our entire campus. But when these containers are full, we simply send an email or make a call, and they come and service these areas free of charge. I think the beauty of what that's grown into organically is that they're already in our buildings since they are our premier provider for printing services. And so now they're actually checking those recycling stations when they come to service the campus. So that's been a very, very seamless program with no cost associated with it. Next slide. Laboratory recycling, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of labs across our campus. We have worked very closely with a lot of our laboratorians and our research labs. We've also partnered on developing SOPs with our Environmental Health and Safety Office. As you can see, the signage here is far different than what you saw in the 5-bin stations. We worked very, very closely with the researchers on the specific items that they see moving through their lab spaces. And through the partnership with Environmental Health and Safety, we were able to identify hazardous materials, how those were supposed to be handled, and then the other items that could be recycled, how they would be handled. We currently only have about, I would say, maybe 15, 20 labs across campus that have a comprehensive recycling program. But this is one of the initiatives that we are rolling out to try to get lab equipment into all of our research labs. It was not a part of the original materials management master plan that Amity shared with us earlier. Much like healthcare, it was not part of that scope. But this is something that we're looking at currently to try to get the proper equipment and signage in those spaces. Next slide. So in the video, there was mention of dedicated specialists that would be in the buildings managing the materials. So prior to our waste policy, custodians were responsible for managing waste in all of our buildings. When the policy rolled out, the desk side service was removed, and that was put on the individual building occupant. And we created a new team of recycling specialists, and you can see one of our specialists is here. We created a shirt specifically with the goal. So you can see the Mobius with the Zero Waste 2025 Emory and Recycle Ambassador. And instead of having waste service during the overnight hours, which had been done in the past, we had our recycling specialists there during the day visible. So if our constituents had questions about what goes where, how do I sort, what happens to downstream recycling, they could answer those questions. We also, as I mentioned early on in the presentation, we do have goals around event waste. The Office of Sustainability Initiatives has a very robust sustainable event checklist. We're doing over 200 sustainable events. And like I said earlier, we no longer provide waste containers for those events. And you can see here's another set of bins that we purchased from from Busch for our event waste. And these are extra large containers because we tend to see a lot more materials at events. This is typically what we would put out for orientation, for our commencement ceremonies. And whenever our staging team is requested to deliver event equipment, this is the standard that is sent. And then, of course, we do have our plastic water bottle goal, not using these at events. We have been building on this program, a lot of bulk water being used around our campus. And for very, very large events, event planners are required to use a bulk water system. Next slide. So as all of you know, education, outreach, communication is so vital to getting landfill diversion right. And again, we partner with our sustainability office. They do a tremendous job with those communications. And they had a tough job selling this waste policy. I'm sure you can imagine, the number of people that work at Emory being told that they had to take care of their own trash. That did not fall very well, especially amongst our faculty, staff, and students. And so There was a lot of work that had to be done prior to that rollout, and they did a fantastic job fielding those questions, dealing with those challenging issues about having to redirect the labor from custodians back to the building occupants. So they did a tremendous job. Here's just a few different things that they did during the policy before it was rolled out, presentations. They had A-frame rotations around campus, and you can see some of the signage here. They had educational videos. Of course, the video that we just showed you, they created. And so they really did a great announcement to the policy before it hit campus on the 1st of January in 2018. And then they continue that education. As I mentioned earlier, they have the Zero Waste Ambassador Program. They've hired 3 zero landfill waste interns in their office. And they do a lot of peer-to-peer waste outreach programs. And they work with us on coordinating tours of our Emory Recycling Center, the MRF that I mentioned. And they've also helped create a video for that recycling center tour. So great cohesion between both offices that I think has really been beneficial to the university and getting to those goals. Next slide. So here you can see where we were in 2015. So the first landfill diversion goal was set in 2005. And in 2015, we came in at 55%, 10% shy of that goal. That was when we realized we really needed to start working on a plan, and when we began to engage Cascadia and Burns McDonald. So 2015, 55%, you can see once we started working with the consultants, our numbers started to go up. And unfortunately, we have seen a decline since the pandemic. We had to change out some of our signage to address how to manage PPE properly. And we also had some challenges around climate change. In 2021, we had severe weather throughout the Atlanta area, and several of the compost facilities that we were working with were shut down. So at that point, a lot of the organics that we were diverting in 2019 and 2020, we didn't have a home for them. And I think that's one of the reasons it was so important to really have local representation with that consulting group. Is there have been a lot of challenges for us. Probably one of the biggest ones is having organics facilities that are vibrant and basically keep their doors open. We've had 4 or 5 different vendors. I would say of the 5 we've had, 3 have gone out of business. And so it's a very challenging market in the state of Georgia. So we're still trying to make our way back up into the 70s. We have some new programs that we're looking at. Organics processors are becoming more prevalent in the metro area. And so we're hoping to see these numbers stabilize over the next year to 2 years. Next slide. And so what's next for us? We realize that contamination is a problem that everyone has. How do you deal with that downstream? How do you deal with ever-changing commodities markets? Right now, the biggest challenges we're having with our materials is having our post-consumer compost sorted, and also finding a recycling processor that will take single-stream material in bags, because the majority of that material comes out of our buildings from custodians in bags. So those are the 2 primary contamination issues that we're dealing with right now. And we feel that looking at more of a self-op model where we can manage the streams internally is really going to lead to long-term success. We also do a lot of site visits of other facilities, see what our neighbors are doing. We have vendor meetings. We have weekly vendor meetings, and we also do field trips where, we're looking for potential partners to help manage our streams. I mentioned earlier that the lab waste program, we see great potential with that to increase our landfill diversion. And the communication and outreach really needs to focus on the contamination and how we can get the contamination down. We do believe that a holistic process of being able to manage those materials at Emory will be a great benefit to us. So those are kind of the next steps for us. I know that we have some panel questions, and I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I will send this back over to Alec.
Great. Thank you, Dina and Amity. Lots of information there, lots of great stuff. It's exciting seeing what Emory has been able to do over the last few years, especially myself. I'm based in South Carolina, and I know firsthand that in the Southeast, when you get outside of the California, the Washington, the New Yorks, oftentimes it's easy to think of making real substantive progress as something that the fancy progressive schools do. But knowing that these are steps that can be taken and that you can really find real success anywhere if you have the right chemistry, the right pieces that come together, it is something that's possible. So we do have many questions, and actually I just want to throw out a question to both Amity and Dina quickly, just to understand your time, because I know we originally decided we were going to cap this at 60 minutes. Just so I know, do you have another 10-15 minutes to address some of these questions if we stay on? Okay, great. Then if we can close the screen share altogether, I think we'll skip the live poll questions we have, just so we can jump into more of the questions that have come in. And I'll start with one, I guess, that several people raised and that I'm also interested in, which is going through this whole strategic planning process, and then actually you have the plan, it's time to implement it. What are some of the barriers? What are some of the road bumps that you have hit over time actually implementing, and can you speak to how you've addressed some of those, knowing that all plans have to land in the real world and actually move forward? So I'll start with Dina if you have thoughts you want to offer there. You're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. I would say for us, we had a very aggressive implementation timeline. And so the Materials Management Master Plan was passed over to us in July by Cascadia and Burns McDonald. And we were given till the end of the year to standardize the entire campus. We were also tasked with taking on all of the newly created recycling specialist roles. So we had to hire 30 people over a 3-month period. We had to, again, we worked very closely with Busch. And so we had to do an inventory of our existing equipment and then see what we needed for the new implementation. And so, the counting of equipment and then the recounting to see what was needed in order to outfit every space. And I know we didn't show all of the different spaces, but, every space was really considered. So a bathroom had a specific piece of equipment, a break room had different equipment. So really kind of looking at the space and what materials would pass through that space to determine what was needed. So there was a lot of upfront work just getting the inventory together, getting the orders out, and ensuring that that equipment got back to our campus before January 1, when that waste policy was rolled out. So I would say that, and the staffing and just the resources, trucks, equipment, everything that was needed during that short timeline was a bit of a struggle. We did it, but it was a struggle.
Yeah. Amity, is there anything, stepping back from the Emory example specifically, that from your experience, you've seen?
I fully agree, Dina, that upfront investment, both of time and dollars in infrastructure, from covering the physical infrastructure, the educational infrastructure, big investment. So planning that to be ideally phased over time. I think there's a healthy urgency we can have here in combating climate change, et cetera. But sort of pace ourselves. And then the ongoing, keeping that program going and sustained. and sustainable over time, and maintaining the level of investment you need from your stakeholders and community. And again, Emory does such a great job with that. But yeah, really having champions and maintaining that energy over time is critical. And then the ongoing data tracking to track performance as well.
Yeah, and actually to that point, there are several questions that have come in around how you did your, Emory has done its data tracking using reliable actual measured weights in all regards, using volume to weight, to the extent that you're relying on estimates from third parties. Do you have any system for verifying and sort of corroborating data? Can you speak a little bit more to that, Dina?
Yeah, so in the process of rolling out this new program, our department was also moved, which was a bit of a challenge because we had someone who was managing our metrics who's been at Emory for over 30 years and did a fantastic job with those numbers. And so when the departments shifted, that landed in my lap. And it was a great learning experience for me. And I can truly say that we do use actual vendor receipts for our weights. And we do a monthly landfill diversion report that also considers downstream contamination that's backed out of our reports, any type of residual recycling that's landfilled. And so, I take pride in the fact that we have been fortunate enough to use vendor receipts to generate that reporting.
Yeah. And I give you props for actually, you're calculating honest numbers. We all know there's a lot of material that can go in a truck off campus. That doesn't automatically mean you are actually diverting that, and actually tracking that level is I think a goal we should all be aspiring to as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. So some other questions come in. One from Teresa pointing out, coming back to sort of the resources, and you want to be able to implement some of these programs. It takes a lot of resources. Certainly one potential way you communicate that ROI, that you sell the investment up to upper administrators, can be on labor savings. So I guess that would be one question. Have you found that from the various programs, shifting to a centralized model, eliminating waste bins, have you been able to quantify a measurable labor savings that you can put a number to, that you can use as to justify an ROI, communicate an ROI?
Yeah, so we have slowly grown into those labor efficiencies. It took a while. It was, like I said earlier, it was such a quick implementation and a quick hiring to make sure that we had, all the boots on the ground were educated. They knew how to answer questions within our buildings. And that just, that took a lot of resources and kind of developing that mid-level management team in order to manage all of the folks that were inside the building, because prior to us taking that on, it was run by our custodial services group, which is, a group of 300 plus. Now it has moved back into that group for efficiencies, just because they have the layers of leadership that can support it. And we're a much smaller group. So we still partner very closely with them on that. But they are seeing labor efficiencies. I think, what we're looking at now is there potential savings from what we're paying third-party vendors to manage? And some of our materials were sorted back in 2019. And so bringing that in-house, that's where we really see that positive ROI coming back to us.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that you have documented, or it's sort of an evolving process of trying to capture those numbers?
Yeah, so that was really an evolving process. And I wish I had better numbers to share with you, but it stayed with our department for about a year, and then it shifted back into another department. And unfortunately, I don't manage those numbers and their labor, so I can't share that with you. All I know is, we are looking for ways that we can perform more in a self-op way to minimize the cost of our program and really increase the labor efficiencies.
Yeah, excellent. Several folks raised questions about removing landfill containers, actually removing bins, which I know this is another one up there with the whole centralized collection model, where oftentimes there is the perception going into it that this is going to create chaos and problems, and so the obvious question that some folks have raised is, if you take away the landfill bin, are you finding lots of contamination? Is that not creating more problems? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so when you look at our campus in an insular way, we feel like we manage our materials very well on campus. We have a ban on styrofoam. So through our central procurement teams, you cannot order styrofoam cups or styrofoam clamshells, that sort of thing. Our dining services team, very committed to using biodegradables, and they've done that for many, many years. We have a campus-wide biodegradable bag for all of our organics now. That's something that we added this year. And so, we feel like from an internal standpoint, we do really well. The challenge that we're seeing now, and this is one of our kind of next steps with our strategies, is the materials that are coming to our campus through our parking decks. So if someone goes to a restaurant that serves food in styrofoam containers, they bring those back to our campus through the parking decks. So we're really trying to kind of look at those specific areas and see, is there a way that we can just get rid of those containers? Because what we're also seeing is in those containers, we're getting household trash. So I know I live about 7 minutes from campus, and you have to buy bags for landfill in my neighborhood. So a lot of people, they try to work around that. And so, we're seeing that folks are bringing household garbage and placing it in our parking decks. So we are seeing contamination, but kind of our next steps to address that is really try to deal with it coming to our campus from outside sources and seeing how we can eliminate that. The next step would be that would run through that sorting process that we're reviewing internally to where we could pull those contaminants out.
Got it. And this may be, you may have sort of addressed this already, but sort of a follow-up question from a few folks was, the signage for the landfill bins was specifically calling out styrofoam, but what about the candy wrappers, the chips and the other miscellaneous ones? And it sounds like that is one of those things you're still having to address because that's coming from outside sources, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we have a unique relationship with a recycling processor that's very close to our campus, and they have a gasifier that they use to power their plant. So for the minimal contamination that we see coming through our streams, it is used to power that plant through a renewable energy source. So that's kind of how we're managing things like wrappers, mylars, items like that. Some of the bigger challenges that we're really seeing with contamination are really on the post-consumer compost side, where at an event, someone will throw a whole hotel pan, a metal pan full of food into a compost bin. How do you do? And that's where we really feel the need for, sorting on campus or finding a downstream vendor that's willing to do that for us.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect setup for another question we had that either, Amity, if you also want to jump in for this one, but one person made the observation that their compost is contaminated to the point they made the takeaway message is that to make it viable, you have to do sorting on the back end with organics, similar to a MRF, but that is its own layer of labor costs, et cetera. And so either, I guess, on your end, is that something you've actually done yet, or Emily, could you point to other facilities that have gone that route and been able to balance the costs and justify that?
You want to take that, Emily? Finish up?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's a real challenge, and we see all kinds of different approaches to this. Ideally, from a managing. Ideally, you're designing your input streams, so you're designing out the problematic contaminants out of the system entirely, right? I just want to continue to elevate reuse, refillables, reduction. So that in an ideal world, we're designing that out. It takes a longer view, that takes time, and may not be an option for you. We also see folks doing that kind of back end sorting themselves, and are, depending on the setting, staffing those bins at events. sometimes with volunteers, sometimes with paid staff, and then also taking control of that organics, back of house in dining environments to do the sorting back of house for folks, so have more control there. And then we're seeing a number of vendors actually pop up who specifically provide this service. And Dina, you could speak to, you've had some different vendors over time there, some of whom I believe did provide that service. So it's possible, and some processors provide that service as well to sort the material as part of their service.
Yeah, and that it was very costly to pay a vendor to do that, but that was really how we were able to get to those, 72, 73, 74 landfill diversion goals, through that manual sort of, the contamination in the post-consumer compost. I don't think it's that unusual. We're starting to see it more and more. We did a tour of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, large concert arena in downtown Atlanta. That's what they're doing now. They have a 2-stream program where they're sorting at their loading dock. They have a handful of temporary staff they bring in after a large concert, and they're manually sorting any contamination out. So, and really to see it, it's, it looks fairly seamless what they're doing. And we really had great success with, with the vendor that we were using in 2019. We did have a few challenges with the stream, and that's one of the opportunities that we're looking at now, is because our bathrooms are outfitted with a compost container. We've had some challenges with sharps, as folks that are insulin dependent are going into bathrooms. We're seeing sharps, and so we're looking at possibly adding a sharp station to our hard to recycle station to have a place for sharps. That was really one of the challenges we had with that post-consumer sort, is that there were needles in that bin from the bathroom.
Yeah. Let's take one more question before we close off, and actually I'm going to use the moderator's prerogative and jump in with one of my own. So making an observation, you've chosen at Emory to do a source separated multi-stream collection system as opposed to a single stream, which we know, the big trend in over the last 10, 15, 20 years has been the opposite direction, going towards a single stream. I'm curious if you can talk to sort of the decision tree that's gotten you to the point of this is a system that makes sense for Emory, or Amity, if you want to drop in to the extent you've been part of that conversation and all.
Dina, we had many conversations and lots of analysis on this. I would welcome you to chime in, and then I can follow if helpful.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of an evolving story. And I've been at Emory long enough to kind of feel like I was the one that had to stand for our source separated program, and that's worked to our benefit. Back in 2008, when there were no markets taking single stream, we were not affected by it because our streams were sorted. Now, as MRF technologies have advanced, we've got a facility where we can send materials with, that's using clean, renewable energy to power those plants. We are taking a second look at that to see, does combining those streams increase participation? We know that our program is complicated. And I mean, our vice president walks up to those 5-bin stations, and sometimes he's like, I don't know what to do. And I don't want to have to figure out where I put a wrapper. So we are looking at that possibility. We're doing a feasibility study to see if it makes sense to commingle those streams internally, and then on the back end at our MRF, separating out some of those materials. And honestly, we are knee deep in those strategies right now. So I can't even tell you where we are. We're just looking at all options right now.
Yeah, and absolutely. It's a tricky one. Emory is so fortunate, I think, to have access to incredible local markets for your recyclables there, for your fiber, your paper products, for metals, for your plastic. I mean, we talked about some unique opportunities you have there. So very robust local market, and provides an opportunity for a more source separated stream, trying to keep those materials cleaner, and real revenue there too. That's been a huge part of the business case for Emory. It's not an inconsequential amount of revenue that is earned from the sale of those materials, which we know those markets change over time. But yeah, it's great. So yeah, so this balance of, you know, cost and revenue and convenience and contamination, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I think Emory's excelled, and it's great that you're evolving and continuing to look at the optimal system for where you're at today. Thank you.
And from a distance, I'm going to go on a limb and suggest that really that comes down, a lot of that is local. You can't just assume that the assumptions that go into that calculation are going to be universal. You know, landfills are much different. Tipping fees are much different in the Southeast than they are in the Northwest, and commodity prices. Yeah, all those factors.
For sure.
Well, thank you. We have more questions. Unfortunately, we were running out of time to get to those. So I apologize to everybody who we've not been able to get to, but we will try to follow up offline with some of these questions. And thank you, Michael, for addressing some of them directly in the chat. If we can pull back up the screen share, I do have a couple of closing slides. A few things I want to point out before we close out. And let's advance 2 or 3 slides if we can to, we have our coming program here. So there was actually one question that was in the chat that I didn't raise, but it's a great segue for this, which is you know, some of the problems around plastics. We've all been hearing about the problems with, you know, the Greenpeace report suggesting that, you know, barely anything gets recovered. Stuff is going to China or not anymore, or it's going to landfill. It doesn't even make environmental sense to recycle plastics. We hear in some cases, there's a lot of both misinformation and just confusion out there. So with our August program, we're going to be inviting Nina Butler, who is a principal and CEO with Stina, and an expert with plastics recycling and circular economy. She's going to be joining us to step back and just understand what is happening in the world of plastics. You know, what's happening with markets? Where's material going? Is there an actual ROI environmentally? If you look at the life cycle analysis, we're going to be hearing sort of a 360 understanding of the world of plastics, so that you as program managers are in a better position both to represent plastics recycling to your communities, and also so that you know the information to help you plan your collection programs and what you should be focusing on or not. So encourage folks to join us in August for that program. And if we can do the next slide. And also just want to point out a number of other things that we have available to build off of this. As we've said in the chat, we'll have both the recording and also the presentation slides from today will be available within the next few days. We'll be sending out a email to everybody who registered to help you find those. These are roughly every month or every other month programs, and we've got a large archive of recordings from past programs on a number of these topics that you see here in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And also want to point out, going into the fall, we're still working on our specific programs, but we're sketching out a couple themes for what we'll be doing in September, October, November. We'll be returning back to this topic of reuse systems and how can we actually implement some of these. Again, not necessarily distant in Seattle, but what's possible, what can be done in our own local communities where we may not have the big resources and support that we might, but are there baby steps? Are there things that are becoming viable that we can be doing? We'll also be taking a direct look at centralized collection programs. How do you implement them? How do you take advantage of those opportunities? So you can find information about these. The new webinars we'll be announcing as they're ready to go, but certainly these resources you can find on our website at buschsystems.com/blogs. And next slide. Thank you, Amity, Dina, and Michael on the back end. Thank you. This has been fantastic. This is great information. Really appreciate the time you put into putting this together and sharing your experience with all of our attendees. If folks want to reach out, we have your contact information up here on the screen. And next slide. we don't have a specific relationship with any one certification system, but if you are doing CEUs through SWANA or state level or other organizations, we can certainly provide you with a certificate of attendance and some details that you can submit. And if those third parties choose to accept them, we'll be happy to help provide that the documentation for that. Just reach out to my colleague Marissa at the email address you see on your screen. Next slide. We'll be sending out a post-webinar survey that, again, we encourage folks, please take 30 seconds to respond, share feedback for our presenters, let us know what we can be doing to improve these programs. You may see that show up on your screen as you exit today, and if not, look for an email that will go out in the next 24 hours. And the last slide, I believe, is part of a transition. So this is the formal end of the formal program, but I do have my colleague Bryan. For those of you who are interested to learn more about Busch Systems and our products, our range of recycling and waste bins, my colleague Bryan is in our showroom, and we're going to turn off our video tiles, and we're going to hand it over to Bryan. But for those who choose to stay along, great. For those who are going to run, thank you again for showing up, and I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you, Alec.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks. And
Take
Bryan,
care.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Alec, and thank you everyone who attended today. We appreciate you spending your afternoon with Busch Systems, and yeah, it's a pleasure to do this for you. My name is Bryan Wojcik. I am with the sales team. I'm a business development manager here at Busch Systems. I know in Dina's presentation, there was one key slide that stood out with me, and it was essentially about consistency. And it was a mismatch of bins, of signs, of labels they had done over the years. And that's where Busch Systems really helps and aids you. We are a bin manufacturer, so we have our stocked options, but we also have customization options. So we're there to help you and aid you along with the process, whether it be customization of labels, signage, bins, we're here for you. The other thing that was mentioned, people were asking questions about resources, tools, and how can they, keep track of their diversion rates. In Alex's presentation, one of the last slides, it showed our website, www.buschsystems.com, and there is a great resource section there, which has all of our previous webinars, tools to guide you and help you along this process. Other case studies are on there, catalogs, so it's a great resource as well. Finally, there was one slide that Dina was talking about, which is the Waste Watcher series, and she mentioned the lift lid. So I have the unit here. I thought I'd bring it over, but essentially this is an organic stream. It is available in the multicolor streams as well. So if you needed a waste lid or what have you, this is a little bit larger. So the Excel size, and then our standard waste watchers. So I just thought, hey, it was mentioned in the slideshow, so I would show the actual bin. So that's the Waste Watcher series. Again, we manufacture everything, whether it be a melamine body, powder coated steel, stainless steel, plastic lumber, plastic bins. So we really have bins that'll meet your needs. And your preferences. And again, the sales team is here to work with you and help you with those diversion rates. So if anyone has any great questions or information or anything that they like, please put it in the chat there. I'd be happy to help you with some questions, or please feel free to reach out to us direct, and one of the sales team members would be happy to help you. So I don't know if there's any questions, Marissa, that have come in.
Hi, Bryan. We don't have any questions yet, but we did have a question come in earlier about restrictive openings. So I see you've got a few around you there. So if you wanted to talk to those a little bit, that would be
definitely. So I guess I will show this spectrum series just because there's some there, as well as I'll pull this back in. But yeah, most of our lines will have various size, color, and options in terms of lids. So you can get a cans and bottle stream, a full stream, a mixed stream, which would be here, a slot for paper. And then we can again look at options if there's something specific based on your requirements. And again, we have our stock sign, which most of what you're going to see around here would be stocked. But then we get into a lot of the signage that was shown in that presentation where they need specific items for specific streams. So we can work with you based on your needs and your goals going forward, and then we can customize that. We always suggest that we'll work with our graphics department, come up with a few mock-ups, and so that you can visually see how this station is going to look when everything's said and done. And then we bring it to market and go from there. Let's see, my question is about, there is a waste station that is designed to fit inside a school classroom. Definitely. We have small size bins for under desks and that sort of thing, all the way up to multi-stream, modular or non-modular systems. Again, based on your material preferences, we can offer various different options and selections. And again, our catalog is a great resource for that on buschsystems.com, or one of the sales staff would be more than happy to help you with those with that selection. And yeah, Marissa jumped in there, the Billy boxes, which is a great example. And the Waste Watcher series here, it comes in multiple sizes, so smaller, larger, more capacity, less capacity. So we have you very well covered.
Thanks so much, Bryan. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the spectrums that are behind you there, the full colored bins that you got right behind you?
Definitely. So the Spectrum series here, as I said, a modular system. So you can expand. Let's say you want to introduce a new stream based on your goals moving forward. It's easily to add in. We have various different sizes, so you can do an ellipse on the end. You can easily add in a full cube, which is this. We have an Excel, the Cube Slims. So various different size options for capacity. Multicolor, so again, you can do the preference of your stream. Some people like all white units, some people like all black. So again, the preference is there. And then we always work with you in terms of our stock signage, or as I said, if custom's required, we're more than happy to help you with your custom needs.
Fantastic. And we did have a question come in asking about bins made with recycled materials. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. That sustainability is key, obviously, with Busch Systems. So we actually have on our data sheets the recycled content. Most of our liners, if they're black, they're going to be 100%. We actually have some bins that have been released, which is made from 100% recycled material, but always with sustainability in mind. We're going to max out that the evaluation as best as possible, just to get the sustainability goals in place. So definitely our products are sustainability in mind with recycled materials.
Fantastic. I think that's all the questions we have. Just to give people a couple more minutes. Did you want to just tell us a little bit more about Busch Systems and maybe our B Corp certification and our values? Thanks, Bryan.
Definitely. Again, 40 years in 2025 will be our birthday, which is great. B Corp was mentioned. I know that is a great thing to have on our shoulders, and we wear that with pride. Anytime that's shown at trade shows, everyone is always expressing, can you give us more details on the B Corp side of things? Sustainability, giving back is key for Busch Systems. And as it was asked, recycled content, sustainability, it's always our focus with our product lines. Various different products available based on material preferences, color preferences, capacity preferences, customization preferences, everything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bryan. I think that's it. I think we're good. Oh, wait, we did just get one more question here.
Yeah, I see that.
Odor control designs for the green bins. I know we have some different lid options and some other things. Can you talk about that?
I'm just going to hop on screen for 1 second.
Sure.
prime example is our little kitchen composters, which I'll just talk about as an option. You can see there our lid. We have various different options in this. So there'll be a solid lid, which this is not. There's also lids which have charcoal filters built into them to help with odor control. That's when you get into the lift lids here. Again, help with odor control. That'll be a key question that your sales rep will walk you through. How often is the bins going to be serviced? Because that is essential. If it's not going to be serviced for a week, odor control is going to be an issue. If it's serviced regularly, we can actually work with that. So definitely options for odor control, and then best practices based on our professional sales team that will walk you and help you with that guidance.
All right, fantastic. Yes, thank you. I think that is it. Thank you so much for staying on and for your questions. I think that's going to be where we're going to end our program for today. Thank you so much, Bryan, for your time and expertise as always, and showing us all of those beautiful bins you have around you. Much appreciated. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks again.